Al Jazeera Podcasts.
A heads up for today's episode. It contains mention of abuse and sexual assault.
If he is found guilty, things could change. If he is not found guilty, I can guarantee that things will stay the same.
Sean Diddy Combs, also known as P. Diddy or just Diddy, has been a powerhouse in hip-hop culture for much of his 3 decades-long career. But now, he's behind bars awaiting trial on charges of sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Combs has denied all the charges. But this story has people talking, and I want to know, is this hip-hop's MeToo moment? I'm Samantha Johnson, and this is Now You Know, a safe space where we go all in on the stories about women, so by the end of each episode, you can say, now I know. Now, I actually started my career in the music industry, so I have a small understanding of how the industry works. But as allegations against Diddy began to surface and gain momentum in recent months, I found myself asking a lot of questions. Now, some of these claims go back several years, and it made me curious about why the wider public didn't really hear about it. So I turned to Hilary Crossley. She started her journalism career in the music industry 2 decades ago as an assistant to the editor-in-chief at one of the most iconic hip-hop magazines in the world, The Source. So Hilary, thanks for joining us on Now You Know.
Hello. Thank you for having me.
So Hilary, I have to admit, I'm surprised that our paths haven't crossed sooner, seeing as we have someone in common. My former editor at Touch magazine all those many moons ago. Look, can you just tell me how and why you got into the industry?
That's so funny. You sound like my mother. What are you doing over there? So for me, R&B and hip hop go together, especially as a African American woman. It's in the water. And so for me, I wanted to record our stories, talk about the music in a broader sense, holistically, right? How it reflects pop culture, how it reflects politics and the political stance and time, how it reflects where people are. And, you know, now that I'm older, I can see in terms of just sexual misconduct, how that, what was okay has become not okay. What seemed fine is now obviously wild and inappropriate. And so I think looking back as like a cultural historian is what I call myself, a cultural worker, that always drew me to the music and drew me to culture because I love understanding what the music says about us.
I want you to take us back to what it was like working at a place like The Source.
If I think back about my experience at The Source magazine, I had just come from MTV News, where I was working as an intern. And my mentor there had hooked me up with an opportunity to be able to be hired as assistant to the editor-in-chief. And I went over there, and I remember laughing to myself because I was not wearing professional clothes at all. It was just like a ripped T-shirt that I found at, I think it was my mom's closet, and like a jean skirt and some sneakers, knowing me.
Uh-huh.
And that was kind of the professional, that was like the look. And so from that, I felt comfortable and I expected to be able to move around in my own skin. And for a lot of the Source experience, it was that. The water I was moving in was, of course, you know, dysfunctional and its own little universe. That said, I had, I think, a bare bones introduction to the music industry. I think there are a lot of similarities between my experience at The Source and other places that I worked, like Billboard and, you know, the BBC. It's just all about really the 48 laws of power. Just maybe it wears a suit at this place, and maybe here it wears a, you know, gold Jesus chain and straight back cornrows. It's all the same sort of experience. And I think as a woman, you always keep your head on a swivel no matter where you are. Whether I worked in a finance office and I'm guarding my drink at after work drinks that they forced me to go to because this is how I move my career up. Maybe I'm not at the golf course, but it's the bar. but I also know things could happen, so I'm protecting myself. I'm going in pairs. Same vibes at the source.
You said that there were things that were acceptable back then but aren't anymore. Can you go into that?
Yeah, I mean, like having your boss think that it's normal for you to sit on his lap when he comes to visit the office. Never something that happened to me, but I saw it happen to other coworkers. Or, so we were having an editorial meeting where we were talking about what we were going to put in the magazine, and a model came in who wanted to be selected for a model section that we had in the magazine called Dime Piece. And her handler came in. I don't know if he was her manager or just her friend. I can't say. And she had come in and she was wearing, regular clothes, but the man had said, and she can disrobe if you need to. And I was so shocked. And my boss at the time just looked up from texting, this was in the 2000s. So she was on her two-way. Woo, 2000s. How you doing out there, girl? And she looked up and said, whatever, and then went back to her texting. And I was gobsmacked. I was like, what? And then all the men in the office were either salivating because they were hoping that she would take it off, or they were also stunned, like, what? And one of them finally said, no, sister, you don't have to do that. And I was so relieved, but I was like, okay. But again, it's the water that you're in. So you know that this place is nuts. And then we just go back to the editorial meeting. And it's like, that was ridiculous. Like, I'm in my 40s now and I look back but even in my 20s, I was like, this is some foolishness.
Ultimately, you just want to do your job. When it came to certain stories, was there an element of fear of publishing something about somebody because of certain backlash?
Oh, absolutely. I remember us having video to one of the early VHS tapes of Big Pun abusing his wife, and it was on camera. And I honestly don't even remember if we published it, because it was a big conversation in-house about whether or not it would damage his legacy. Should we, you know, take down this New York icon that everyone celebrates and disparage his name with clear footage of him being abusive? Or should you just not say anything at all? And so this is the kind of thing that I think about when people talk about the MeToo movement in the music industry and whether or not it's ever actually going to cross over, because I don't know if that makes any sense, because it's so charged with all of these other trappings of American culture, like white women accusing black men of raping them when really nothing happened, and then this black man gets lynched, and you have an Emmett Till situation where you're talking to somebody or you whistled at a white woman and now you're dead. And so a lot of that protection comes up when something like that is debated as something to publish or not. And in those moments, it's kind of a two-edged sword. Like, yes, that is a history that we have to deal with, but this is not that. So who are you actually protecting? Are you protecting the victim or are you protecting the aggressor? With an added layer of this person is no longer with us. So what are we really talking about here? It's the protection of patriarchy.
Okay, so this came out after Big Pun's death. For those who aren't aware of who Big Pun is, he was a very prominent, popular, some would say iconic rapper. And you received this story afterwards. What happened?
At the time, it was, like I said, very okay, but is this going to damage his legacy? And why would we want to do that? He's dead. So what point do we have in releasing this information? What's the purpose? What's the gain?
We have to talk about Mr. Sean Diddy Combs.
Breaking news tonight, Sean Diddy Combs has been arrested in a Manhattan hotel this evening after a grand jury indicted the music mogul.
He's awaiting trial, currently charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution, and he was denied bail for the third time in late 2024. Where were you when you heard that he was arrested? And what were you thinking?
I was probably on Twitter looking at people making jokes about baby oil and whether or not he was with his kids when they were handcuffed or whether he had already absconded. And so I think that's where I was, just everybody realizing after seeing the Cassie video, because there was a lot of, why are all these men protecting this man after they saw the video of Cassie? So I think it was just, this is really interesting. To me, it's really interesting because now I want to see if American justice is actually going to do the justicing. Will the justicing be justicing, or will the justicing just be like pretending to justice? We don't know.
So Diddy's ex-girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, she filed a lawsuit against him, accusing him of rape and sex trafficking over the course of their 10-year relationship. Walk me through that video.
Because I watched it once and I didn't watch it again. So my description will be loose. But basically, she comes around a corner of a hotel elevator hallway into the elevator bank area. She is clearly trying to leave, and she's fully clothed, and she's got designs on leaving. He comes around the corner in a bathrobe, which automatically why doesn't he have clothes on? And hits her, knocks her down. If I remember correctly, he kicks her, and then he starts dragging her back from whence she came. And it's clearly a moment where she was trying to leave. She was trying to go. And he said, no.
I remember her being barefoot and thinking how desperate you have to be. What was so interesting to me about the whole Cassie situation, when she filed the lawsuit against Diddy, people were saying, oh, she's just doing it for the money. Why is she trying to take a successful black man down? Why didn't she leave? Why didn't she do this? And then people didn't believe it until they saw the video.
There are people who have this idea that, oh, well, maybe she was asking for it, or she knew what she was doing when she signed up for this kind of relationship with this man. You're signing up for the hip hop relationship of, all of this money to spend on different things, and whatever else comes with it, you have quietly agreed to, is what I can assume. But no, that's not what people have signed up or agreed to. And there are a lot of things that happen in hip hop that confound me.
What did you think when you watched the Cassie video? Like, what was going through your mind when you were watching it?
I thought, this is horrible. I'm thinking, I pray for this woman. I hope that she's okay. I'm furious about the way that the music industry and America writ large, and patriarchy writ large, has allowed and made this moment possible. Because if that's on video, that means his security was there protecting him while he was doing that. Because they could easily push him away, but they didn't, right? Because they're bigger than him. You get paid to be bigger and carry firearms. You didn't stop him. The hotel security didn't stop him. The hotel manager who was working at that place didn't stop him or release the video to help him be stopped. The person who is recording the video, who's sitting there watching it as it happens, didn't stop him. All of these things had to work together for her to be treated like that. And so that's what I'm thinking. Like, as a woman, how many things must conspire against you? I laugh, but it's not funny at all. I laugh at the ridiculousness of the chorus of things that have to happen for that moment to occur.
Why aren't these men being held accountable?
Again, as I said, I'm a cultural historian. I like to look at the ways that popular culture is influenced by the many other things: the legal system, the political system, culture overall, and where people are and what they're doing. And I think while there may have been a MeToo in the Hollywood industry, right? And Harvey Weinstein seems to be the fall guy for that area. The why aren't they held accountable question is murky, and it reflects the larger society. And I think it's really a question of whether people are ready to release their hold and their worship of the patriarchy. Because in order to view these women as human and see their experiences as terrible, you have to then turn around and say, okay, what are the factors that led to this happening? What are the factors that made it okay at that time for this person to think that they could do this and that it was okay? And then also, are all of those factors going to be at play when they're standing in front of a judge, supposedly being held accountable? Probably, because it's all in the same country, right? It's the same country that gave them the space and the runway to do the act in the first place. So now we're looking at that same culture in that same country to hold them accountable for something that they let them do, essentially.
Do you think that this Diddy case will make waves in the hip hop MeToo movement?
I think that it's definitely going to try. I think that we are waiting to see what's actually going to happen, because he's got a lot of different cases against him. So I think we're just waiting to see. And especially in this time where it looks like it could be a redux of president's previous administration, where he was releasing people from jail who were clearly in communication with him as some sort of a quid pro quo. Um, it might be the same situation with Puffy. He might be able to work the quid pro quo system. In his heyday of white parties and being a socialite, he spent time with Trump. So he might call on that relationship to get his federal charges dropped. It's anybody's guess at this point. So it's really unclear.
I mean, during his first term as US president, Donald Trump did pardon like rappers, Lil Wayne.
Mhm.
He also pardoned the Rock Nation CEO, Desiree Perez, and Death Row Records co-founder Michael Harris.
I think that the justice system has shown us that sometimes it works for you, sometimes it can not work for you. I think for a lot of Black people in this country, it does not work. I think for a lot of Black women in this country and women in general, specifically in sexual abuse cases, it can often not work. And so I just don't have high hopes, but I am still hopeful.
So why now? Why are we only holding these men accountable now?
I think with Puffy himself, I think he just is not at the height of his popularity that would inculcate him from uh, the charges actually sticking, right? I keep making a comparison to Bill Cosby, but the parallels are so clear. In the same way that people were making the same allegations toward Bill Cosby during the height of the Cosby Show, right? The accusations wouldn't stick. They just wouldn't stick. He had too much entertainment industry political power. He had too much money so that he could pay for lawyers to delay things. But as with his fall thing, he wasn't as popular. He didn't have so much protection. He wasn't helping the bottom line of as many people. So people were more willing to say, yeah, we've known about this for years. Let's talk about it, right? And I think Puffy might be at that same place. But again, if he's able to work that back channel, maybe we don't have justice. And maybe this continues on.
Many people are questioning how much the industry knew and chose to ignore. Will this Diddy case be the turning point in the hip hop industry?
It depends on, in my opinion, which way it goes. If he is found guilty, things could change. If he is not found guilty, I can guarantee that things will stay the same. I think people may be more careful about whatever abuse they are planning on. But who's to say? Because if this person with all of this evidence, and by that I mean a number of accusers are saying that he sexually abused them or participated in gang rapes or drugged them or offered them a drink and then things got fuzzy and they don't remember. If you look at patterns of abuse, similar to the Bill Cosby scenario, where you have many, many, many victims saying the same story, then you have to think twice. My granddaddy said, if more than one person tells you the same thing and they don't know each other, you need to think about it. Because why else would they be saying the same thing? They have nothing to gain from it. If anything, if you're bringing a sexual assault case towards someone, you have something to lose. So it takes a tremendous amount of strength for people to come forward. Because like I said, justice is sometimes elusive. And so, like I said earlier, I hope that it changes. I hope that this is a clarion call for people to realize we don't do that here.
Hillary, this is not an easy conversation to have.
Yeah.
But I'm so glad we're having
Yeah.
it. Thank you.
But thank you for talking about this, because I think the more you push something out of a dark corner, the more people can interrogate their relationship with, okay, am I supporting this? Am I doing this on my own? Right? Because if patriarchal oppression is in me, nobody else even has to do anything because I'm equivocating it myself. And so you have to think to yourself, and I do this a lot, again, now that I'm older, and say, that was raggedy. And the ideas and the misogyny are all bedrocks for those kinds of patriarchal misconduct, right? All of those things where people are singing songs about sexually abusing girls in groups. And we sang it and thought it was great, right? We weren't
it's a
thinking
great
about the
tune.
words at
It's a
all.
bop.
We
Like,
didn't know what they were talking about. We were like 13.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're talking about. Not in my life, right? Well, not in a real experience. But then it's like a step back again and think about the other ways. Well, maybe did I allow myself to be disrespected by thinking that this song itself was okay? And then you start to rethink your favorites. And then it's a slippery slope. So, thank you for having me.
Please let me know what you think about Diddy's case by sharing your thoughts in the comment section. And if you have stories you'd like us to explore on Now You Know, just let us know in the comments. Thank you, and see you again next week.